Hey YouTube, Jayden here, meaning it's Monday. Um, so I just want to start off this video by saying thank you to everyone who subscribed and watched our videos during our first week of this channel. We had a great turnout and we're really excited to keep making these videos for you and for the community. So just want to throw that out there. Thank you. So this week's topic is about our beginnings, how we came to terms with our trans identity, and the process of how we got to where we are today. And I just want to start off by saying that this is my own personal story, and my story is not going to be the same as anyone else's. Every trans person is different. Every trans person's story is going to be different. So this is just my personal experience, my personal narrative. It's going to be very different from yours, but I just wanted to put my experience out there so that anyone who have similar, experiences can relate. So yeah, this is just my story. It's a long process for me, so that's why I have like little fancy notes down here to make sure I'm on track with all the points that I want to make. So I guess we should start from the very, very beginning, which is for me was when I was a little kid, 3, 4, really young. And back then, when you're a kid, you're not aware of gender. You're not aware of, your body as much as when you're grown up, and that's partially because what society tells you. But when I was a little kid, I wasn't aware of gender, and so I always wore boys' clothes. That's what I was the most comfortable with, and I had really short hair. The typical Asian bow haircut back in the day. Yeah, bow haircuts. So yeah, I was very fortunate to have parents who didn't really care about how I dressed as long as I was happy, and I was very happy with my boys' clothes that my older cousin handed down to me. So even during that time when I was wearing the clothes that I wanted, I didn't know why, but I still felt different from other kids. And I didn't really associate that with the way I looked, like dressing, gender expression, and gender performance. I wasn't aware of that, but I knew something was different because kids were bullying me. I was bullied a lot when I was a kid, but I always associate that with my ethnicity, because in my class, being from Kentucky, I was the only Asian kid in the class, and at that point, I was the only kid in my class who didn't know how to speak English. So I stood out like a sore thumb, like, oh, there's that Asian kid. So I was bullied a lot, and I was associated with racism rather than how I looked. But as I got older, I continued to feel different. I was made very aware of my gender at an early age. Like, I got harassed in bathrooms a lot by other kids, which created a lifelong fear of bathrooms for me. But that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story. um, but yeah, when I was in second grade, I was approached by a school administrator. I was pulled out of class, and she told me, I was 7. She told me, you have to start wearing girls' clothes or you can't come back to school. And that just blew my mind because that made me very self-aware of what I look like, the body that I was in. It made me very aware that I was female, and my gender expression didn't match my my body at the time. So that created a crazy mess and a fear of looking masculine. Like, I've always been a very tomboyish kind of person, but like I felt like I had to cut back because of that, and so I grew my hair long. I was wearing uniforms at a time, but I started wearing more feminine looking clothes, like pink, and still like the stereotypical pink and bright yellow colors. That's associated with girls' clothes, and I hated it. I hated it. I felt so uncomfortable, and I didn't know why. Like that feeling of uncomfortableness doesn't come with just wearing girls' clothes. It was something different, but I couldn't pinpoint it. But I just know that I hated every minute of it. But I was afraid to, start wearing boys' clothes again in fear of getting in trouble by authorities. I have authority issues. So in high school, I came out as lesbian, and even in the LGBT circles that I was in, I felt really different. And and it's not because of my ethnicity anymore, because I went to a high school that was, a lot of diverse, ethnicities there. So I wasn't the only Asian in school. I hopefully knew how to speak English during that time. But like I still felt really different, and I didn't know why. I still felt really uncomfortable with myself. I still felt really uncomfortable with the like among the circles that I was in. So I don't know what caused me to start, wear more androgynous clothes, and I think it's partially because I started playing softball at the time, and wearing more like gym-like clothes, androgynous looking clothes was more acceptable for me, and so that was my routine for a while, just wearing really gym clothes like clothes, and androgynous looking clothes, just the typical jeans and t-shirt, you know that's that's pretty gender neutral. And at that time, I still didn't know what the term transgender mean. Um, like I've heard it once or twice, but I didn't know what that entailed. And so like I was dressed very masculine. Had my short hair at the time, and so I just thought I was a butch lesbian, and I accepted that for a while. But even as a butch lesbian, I still felt very weird and very different and very uncomfortable. And again, I don't know why. And it was a very weird time in my life. So enter college. I started doing drag every once in a while, and I also started cosplaying, which for people who aren't in the anime or uh, sci-fi convention kind of scene, it's costume role playing where you dress up as a character from a series that you like, and you just dress up and go to conventions and hang out with friends. So I always cosplayed male characters. So I've been doing that for about 6 years now, and so I've been binding for a long time, and even before that, I got called Sir and Mister like throughout my whole life. And each time that happened, each time I bind, each time I went to these spaces where I could, present myself in a male form, I felt so comfortable. And every time I got addressed as Sir and Mister, I was ecstatic, and I didn't know why I was so happy. I just adrenaline rush, and it just blew my mind how happy I was during these periods. And so it brings me to a more like current time in my life. During my master's program, a new professor started working in our department and does a lot of research with queer topics. So I wanted to get a lot of research experience for doctoral programs. And so I joined her research team and found out that most of her research deals with trans issues or trans-related topics. And at this point, my knowledge of trans stuff is still minimal, and based on stereotypes that are thrown around in mainstream media. So like all negative. It's men dressing as women, just really stereotypical, really negative stuff. And I only heard negative things about trans people. How they're unhappy, how hard it is. how they're gonna regret it later in life, and it scared the shit out of me. It scared me, and because I was on this research team, I was forced to do a lot of research, not only academically, but also socially, what it means to be trans and trans related topics. So I got a better sense of what it meant to be trans. It is no more this stereotypical idea of what a trans person is. Um, so it forced me to think about my own gender identity during this time, and it opened up a lot of doors, I guess. Like I forced this idea of gender like to the back of my mind. Like I tried not to think about it throughout my whole life, but now I'm forced to think about it. And now during this time, because I am forced to think about it, I have to confront my fears about my gender, and that scared me. That scared me. Um, so one of the research that I started doing with this research team uh, dealt with positive experiences of trans folks, and I talked to a bunch of, I wouldn't say bunch, you know, a lot of shit, several people, several trans people from across the Midwest about their positive experiences, and I saw just how happy they were to finally be themselves, despite all the discrimination, prejudice, difficult times with their families, relationships, the government, the financial, all that stuff. Despite how hard those aspects of their lives was, um, they were still incredibly happy just to be themselves, and that gave me hope. And so that made me feel a little bit better about my gender identity, even though I was still struggling with it a little bit. But I felt alone. I felt alone because I couldn't find any research or any resources or any information specifically for trans API people. So I still felt alone in that aspect. So back in May, I went to this conference called the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference. Um, and I've met up with fantastic trans API people. They include Eli, who is our Tuesday guy, and there I kind of tested my preferred pronouns there. And during a convention, I was uh, addressed as with male pronouns, and it felt amazing. It felt at home for me, and it made sense to me, even though it didn't really at the time. It just felt like it made sense. Um, so after that, I went to a couple more trips and conventions and tested that out. And then I came out to more of my friends, and they started using my preferred name, Jayden, and using my PGP, and it just felt right. And there's no other way to explain how that feels unless you've been through it. And so, like, I can say that, like, I went through a lot of therapy during that time, so that's stuff. But, long story short, because this video is already way too long than I had intended, but it just, that's how I got to where I am. It just, a lot of trial and error, a lot of trial by fire, and just being able to confront my fear of my gender identity in a very safe environment, because I was incredibly lucky to have an amazing support system, amazing group of friends who supported me through all this. So because of that, and because I had been able to do my own research and be able to do that in the field that I am in, gave me a lot of hope that if anything happens, I have something to fall back on. I have incredible people to fall back on. And so throughout this whole process, it was hard, but it was a learning experience for me, and being able to confront my fear of my gender and be able to walk through that and fight off that fear and be able to stand here as who I am today is an incredible feeling. So I don't know if that really makes sense, because it makes sense to me because I lived through it, but I can't really say much because this is very subjective for everyone. So if you have any questions, please just put it in the comment below and I'll get back to you. But otherwise, I think I've talked long enough, and so I will see you in 2 weeks.